Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick, and it's time for part 2 of the review of the offense against the Browns in that Week 11 game, the win in Cleveland. Joining me again is Joe LaCroix. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Ken. How are you?
No complaints. Great to have you back. We talked about some really interesting stuff, I thought, in the first episode of the show. And for those of you who don't know Joe, he's the producer of the Big Bad Morning Show on 105.7. He's also integral to their operations at the radio station in terms of understanding how things fit together, what the strategic plan is for running a sports station and whatnot. And I did not know that about Joe, by the way, but I got introduced that to Joe in working at the station. I thought it was very interesting. But great to have you here, Joe. And you had some interesting comments, I thought, in the first part about venting calls and how your week kind of rolls out in terms of what type of calls you get.
Well, it hasn't been so bad this week. I will say that. I'll always better with a win than a loss, but even then, I mean, you still got a lot of, we won, but this, or this team will be one and done in the playoffs if they make it at all. So it's not the sky is falling, but it's definitely a lot of people that are still hitting the alarm button. Not as many fire Harbaugh calls, but I'm sure if they drop one of the next few games, that'll be back on. But no, it's been solid this week. Not too much to complain about. It also helps that they're playing the Jets next Sunday. But we'll see how it is a month from now, depending on where they stand. Heading into the Steelers game and then the Patriots game.
That's it. It's one of the things we didn't directly hit on was whether or not the Ravens seem like they could be a team that could make a playoff run. And the hand waving or discounting of what they just did to the Cleveland Browns in this game, I think is probably unfair. Yes, Shedeur Sanders came into the game. Yes, they started Dylan Gabriel, and he's not any good either. And the offense nearly gave the game away anyway. But I still look at the defensive effort and I say you can discount it, but I have a really hard time, meaning you can adjust for it. Let me put it that way. But I don't think you can completely discount it.
No, I mean, I was thinking about this last night. This team we have this year is probably, of the last 3 years, the quote unquote worst Ravens team that we've had. You could also argue that the Ravens team that won the Super Bowl in 2012 paled in comparison to the team the year before. So, I mean, it would. I have specifically said I'm not making any type of prediction. The last 2 years, I was really high on both teams, and it didn't work out too well. So I'm going with something. I'm gonna fade that this time and just say whatever happens. I will say over the last 11 weeks, I think we've maybe had 2 calls where we've had people that are strong enough to come in and say the Ravens will win the Super Bowl this year. The fans are not on with that one. I will say that there are people that are cautiously optimistic that they can win the division, win one playoff game, and then after that, it's all.
Here's something, folks. You want a little reason for optimism? I'll give you 2 reasons for optimism. The Kansas City Chiefs are 5-5. They are not going to win the AFC West. They are not going to do it, and that means if they get into the playoffs, where do you think they'll be playing? Possibly. If they're playing on the road, they'd be playing in Baltimore. If they play the Ravens, they'll be playing in Baltimore almost certainly, because the Ravens aren't getting in the back door via the wild card either, and the Ravens Chiefs certainly are not together getting in the wild card together. At given the records in the AFC. Reason number 2, Buffalo is 7-3. They have a very good chance not to win the East, and if they get in the playoffs, then they'll be coming to Baltimore instead of that miserable Buffalo Stadium in January. It's one of the worst places to experience a football game in January.
Yeah, you were there last year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, even baking under the lights of that club level, which we did. You still have to walk to your car and walk back. It's a miserable experience.
And everybody looks like it's a rotisserie chicken kind of situation when you're under those red lights. I didn't even know that they did that until I was watching. Like, I don't know how I missed that, but I was like, what is that red section up there? I was like, oh, those are heaters. That makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, if that's the case, though, Ken, you might have gone to one of the last playoff games in Buffalo then, because they got that new stadium opening up.
They have a new
next
stadium.
year?
It will still be open air, and they intentionally did that, even with they're going to allow the snow to fall, and they think they get a home field advantage of it, and they probably do. It's just it's an awful place to play a football game. I really hate that stadium. The fans are nice enough, but I just really hate that stadium. And the reason number 3 to be optimistic: if the Chiefs finish not in first place, if the Bills finish not in first place, and the Ravens do win the AFC North, the Ravens will not play either team during the regular season in 2026. That's really something nice to look forward to.
I did not realize that. That's actually a good point. That'd be good. I'm tired of the Monday night, their Thursday night, Sunday night Chiefs Ravens or Bengals or Bills Ravens games.
Yeah. Now we talked about Lamar's opportunity set and how bad it was in the first segment. The 14 pressures, only 5 ATS. A lot of it was on the offensive line, but it wasn't entirely on the offensive line.
Yeah, and that's perfect segue. That's what we call that in the business, Ken. We'll start left to right though. Ronnie Stanley. I'm interested to see what kind of grade you gave him, because I'll be honest, I have not been very high on Ronnie this year for the most part, and it seemed like this past Sunday was maybe not one of his best games.
Sorry about this. Yeah, he had a tough game, that's for sure. And he's facing Myles Garrett, so I would expect that, and you'll see I've adjusted for that in a way. But he made 45 out of 58 blocks, which is not a good place to start. He missed 8 blocks, but he also gave up 5 pressure events. 2 of them were plain pressures, 1/3 of a quarterback hit, half a sack, another third of a sack. I did think on the very first sack, he actually let the first touch occur. It was really like a hand swipe from Garrett as he went by the play. Almost looked like a good 12-6 block by him, and then he kind of gave up on the block as he got Myles past the pocket, and Faalele allowed Graham to come in and get the pressure, which really created the sack. So he got 2/3 of that one on the play. Faalele did, and Stanley only got 1/3. He did some things that were good in terms of mobility: 6 blocks on level 2, 2 pancakes, 2 out of 2 on pulls. It's not like there were really positive things to draw from this game in terms of him being mobile enough to make some blocks, but a C- for the game, only a 60 in terms of the raw score, and plus the maximum of 0.10 that I give anybody under my system for facing Myles Garrett.
Well, and historically, he's always struggled with Myles Garrett.
Struggled tremendously.
And I mean, obviously, I don't know if there's anyone out there that can say they do good against Myles Garrett, but it's always one of the main matchups that you have to look at when you're going into a Browns-Ravens game is who gets the pleasure of dealing with Myles Garrett. And I expected a little bit more out of Ronnie this past weekend. I don't know if you had how you might have scored this one. He also completely missed Myles Garrett on a 1st and goal when they were on. It was a little under 6 minutes remaining in the second quarter. It was a 2-yard tackle for a loss. And the way they were in trips to the left, Ronnie goes to the right, and Myles Garrett just is completely unblocked under that point. I think it was 5:54 left in the second quarter. Right. And I think what I believe had happened was that he thought Ricard crashes in to give him some help, and the play goes to the right. Maybe it was just completely blown up. They went quick. I don't think they were ready.
Yeah, here what happened on that play, and I have a visual memory of it now, is Ronnie down blocked on the defensive tackle, and he clearly expected Ricard to make that block. Now, a lot of times people say, well, you don't understand the assignment, Ken. You can't possibly understand how to score that. I get that bullshit all the time, believe me. But after the play, the cues are all there that it was not Stanley's fault.
Yes.
Look for the guy who's upset. He's the guy who did his job properly, generally speaking. Yeah. And Ronnie was like, come on, what are you doing?
What is this? So. All right. I'm glad we saw the same thing, because that was one that really stuck out to me when I first saw it on the broadcast. But just overall, though, do you feel, is this a regression year for Ronnie, or is it just the way things are going? Just it's not, he's not playing as well. It's just the rest of the team around him is not playing as well.
I wouldn't say it's the rest of the team. He's a left tackle. You play on an island kind of all the time in a certain sense. When you're expecting a help block from your left guard to bail you out, that's not a good sign for a left tackle, period.
Yeah.
So I'd say that this is probably the new expectation for his
Okay.
next year, which might be the last year of his Ravens career. And he signed for effectively 2 years, $44 million. The Ravens have $16 million they can get out of in that third year, or they might want him for all 3 years. The big thing that's happening, and this is at left tackle, this is the appropriate place to mention it. By the way, C- for Stanley for the game. But with Joe Noteboom, who the Ravens picked up to be the backup tackle, was a healthy scratch for the second consecutive game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it had happened one time, I might say, it might be an illness, or it might be a personal reason, or maybe he had to attend a funeral or do this or that. There could be all kinds of reasons why he wouldn't be there. They might say, they might not, depending on the nature of the problem. But it's been 2 weeks in a row. There's no doubt in my mind this means that Carson Vincent is now the backup left tackle, which is an enormous, ringing endorsement of him from the coaching staff. It's also, by the way, a big change on the offensive line that the Ravens were willing to make, because any game that Ronnie Stanley goes out there is a chance for Ronnie Stanley to not be in there at the end of the game.
Yeah, considering his injury history, that is he always has to stay ready. I mean, everybody's asking for changes on the O-line. That is a major one, but it's just not exactly what everybody's looking for at this point in time.
It's not visible to everyone, but it should at least tell them that they're evaluating players who aren't getting anything but practice snaps, and they're saying he's ready and he's not. And they've decided Carson Vincent is ready. That should be evidence to people. Some wheels should start clicking about whether or not they've fairly evaluated players like Cleveland and Jones in his current state, whatever that is, because we have no idea. And even Bullock. Yeah.
All right. Well, moving over to Andrew Voorhees. What grade did you give him for last Sunday?
C- for the game. He had some problems with pressure in this game. I saw PFF was fairly lenient with him, which was interesting. I didn't check in with them to see what plays they'd score differently. By the way, this is something that PFF's very good about, being transparent about what their plays are. So if I say, here's the pressures I had, they'll send me back exactly where they downgraded somebody by more. But he had 2.5 pressures allowed as I saw it, and I had him as 1 plus another 1/3 of a quarterback hit. So those were fairly significant negative scores. He didn't really miss 3 blocks in this game, which was good. He's got a streak going right now. Got a C- for the game. Got a streak going right now where he's made 19 consecutive pulls, going back to the Houston game is the last time he missed. So week 5 was his last miss. So that's a really nice streak. And the Ravens don't have good mobility at guard. So whether you have Cleveland or Falele, neither of them are particularly impressive pullers.
Nope.
But the Ravens have made a lot of unathletic people, and Voorhees I put in this group, not particularly impressive athletes, into good pulling guards. And James Hurst and Bradley Bozeman kind of fit in that group as guys who could do it. So I'm happy about that part of his game. And by the way, if you're looking for Andrew Voorhees to get replaced, you're going to be disappointed. The guy's got 2 years left on his rookie deal. So I mean, the Ravens are looking for cheap talent. I mean, they're definitely sticking with him. Falele would be the first to get replaced.
Do you feel that we're at the ceiling of, like, how much more can we get out of Andrew Voorhees?
I think there's more. I think technically he can do more. I think he can learn to anchor better. He's got some limitations in terms of arm length and some other things that will always dog him to a certain degree. He's also got, for a guard, he doesn't have a normal guard pear-shaped build. So you like to have big muscular ass and glutes and thighs, that you see from Larry Little and some other great guards from all time. But he's a tall, thin, very powerful guy. He might have been a guy who was better at right guard because of the strength. But then I think that if it's probably more likely that Emory Jones would be the guy who would fit naturally there, or Cleveland, but either one.
Okay. Well, let's move over to the center. This is the best grade of them all. Tyler Linderbaum, break down his game for me from Sunday.
So he had his best game of the season, and I know that he was pegged with a sack by PFF. My guess is that PFF did not mark him down for that sack. The reason I say that is because it happened after 3 seconds, and so he held his block long enough for ATS under my system. He gets no charge. In fact, it's a made block on that play. So PFF probably scored him as no worse than a 0 on that play, maybe even a positive on it on that play. And he only had 3 missed blocks. I think only one of those was actually a loss at the line of scrimmage, which is really good. I separate the missed blocks into those two types. If you want more detail on that, go to the articles on filmstudybaltimore.com and you'll get more detail on those missed blocks. But 8 blocks in level 2, made 2 pancakes, had a really nice highlight combination block. I mean, this is all you ever want from Tyler Linderbaum. And as it was with Marshall Yanda when he's really in his heyday, when he's reeling off a good game and he doesn't have any significant errors and no negative plays for Linderbaum in this game, the paragraph is like that thin. And people think I'm doing him a disservice. No, that's what you want. You don't want a long paragraph.
With that said, though, so over the weekend there were some rumors that about his contract status moving forward, and apparently they're pretty far apart.
Yeah.
In terms of what he wants to be paid and what he could get from them. But games like this last Sunday show that this is a guy that you could see yourself spending $20 million plus a year on.
I just wouldn't go that high. The problem with Linderbaum is he's been a relatively poor pass blocker throughout his career. Okay. In fact, for 3 of his 4 seasons, this game really helped. He's now up to 24th among 32 pass blockers at center. So that's not ideal, but it's better than where he was. And he's typically been the best or the second best run blocker. But you've got Creed Humphrey sitting up here, who's like the Superman of centers, who does everything well.
Yeah.
And then there's not any people within a large margin of him. And then there's a bunch of guys who can pass block and aren't particularly great run blockers. Those guys are actually more valuable, in my opinion, than Linderbaum. So I wouldn't pay top of the market money for Linderbaum. I wouldn't give him $18 million a year, which is what Creed Humphrey's making. I'd try and get it done for 15 or 16. And if somebody else wants to pay him 20, we'll take the comp pick.
Fair enough. I mean, it would be he's kind of carved out a niche in this offense, especially considering how much they run the ball, how important that is. I mean, if I feel kind of bad though. The rumor was he wants $20 million a year, but that's just not. It doesn't seem like something for a center, at least. Has his team ever paid top dollar for a center ever?
They refused to pay it to Jason Brown in 2008. Yeah. He might have been good enough, and then they went out and they got Matt Burke, who's even better. Matt Burke, in fact, broke the scoring system for me in terms of who he was. Outstanding player. And then they've had some problems. They had Gradkowski for a period of time. They had Jeremy Zuda, who wasn't particularly great. And then they had Matt Skura, who was really good for the money, but was not particularly great. And then they've finally gotten Linderbaum after a couple other misstarts. And I'm trying to remember the other centers we had in that period of time. Bozeman. Yes. All right, let's move over to everybody's favorite lineman in Baltimore, Daniel Faalele. What did Daniel get on Sunday? Okay, so it was his tied for his worst game of the year in actual score. He scored a 68 on an adjusted basis, which is exactly what he scored in the first game against Buffalo. So 58 plays, 46 blocks, 7 missed, half a penetration. That means he contributed to a loss on a run play. And then he had 1 plus a half plus a third in terms of pressures. So some people hear me say funny things like 1.83 pressures, and they go, 1.83 pressures. Why are you even bothering to micromanage?
Yeah.
Well, it's because every pressure gets divided out fractionally to any number of linemen as I see fit. And I don't share out, have 3 full pressures allocated, even though 3 guys might've been responsible for the pressure.
That makes sense now.
That's how you get a third. So anyway, 1.83, 1 in 5, 6 pressures in the game, 2/3 of a sack. I talked about that play a couple times in terms of it was the first sack by Garrett, where Garrett kind of ran by the pocket and just touched Lamar on the play, and then it was really Faalele who gave up the pressure to Graham that set it up. But I'd say that Faalele is playing right these last couple of weeks, probably right at the replacement level, that is not good. That's where if the man on the street can replace you, then your backup can probably replace you. But if the man on the street is a 1-for-1 replacement for you, then the guy on the guy who's your backup might be able to. I think it's becoming more likely that it might happen. But I'll say this, and I put out about a 4-minute video on Twitter about this just earlier this afternoon. The Ravens probably will approach it by first starting with a rotation, and they're never going to tell us before the day of the game. The way you learn is somebody at the game, Jeff Zrebeck or other people you follow on Twitter, will post out that the starting offensive linemen are blah, 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 are practicing. So it looks like those 5 are going again. You might see a change made there if they're changing the starter. More than likely, they're going to change with rotation. So they're going to change by having a player play 2 series in each half, or whatever it might be, or each guy might play a quarter, that kind of thing. Ravens have done that at so many positions. The fact that tool is available to them to make that change should tell you a lot about how the Ravens feel about the backups right now. They probably feel Ben Cleveland just doesn't have his head in it. They may feel that Emory Jones isn't just quite ready physically to be the player that Daniel Faalele is. And Bullock is our backup center, and we're not taking a chance on that. So we're leaving him at that position only. I think that their basic feeling is that the other alternatives they have are not better. And for all the people who think they know better, I even after scoring 20 years of offensive line blocking, including a fair amount of Ben Cleveland's play. I've seen Ben Cleveland play a fair number of blocks. I can tell you, I'm not savvy enough to know right now if Ben Cleveland is better than Daniel Faalele. They know more from all the practice time, so I have to trust them.
Yeah, and I think this is where there's a meeting of, and I hear this a lot, it can't be any worse than Daniel Faalele, which, I mean, don't test, let's not test that theory. And B, I hear this all the time. Like, John Harbaugh is not the most liked guy in Baltimore when it comes to sports figures. And there's a lot of people that think he's an idiot. And it's gotten to the point where they truly do believe that he is. It's like that he thinks, Ben Cleveland's in the doghouse. Ben Cleveland has had every opportunity to have this job. If he's not good enough to do it, you need to trust the coaching staff in saying that they know what they're doing. I mean, no offense to, Randy and Essex, but I'm pretty sure you don't know better than any of the coaches on the team right now. Mm-hmm. So when you already don't like the coach and he's making these things and it's just as it has to be just as maddening for them as it is for us, because they have a lot more on the line than we do, that when they see Daniel Faalele, when they see videos of him spinning in circles and they're watching film and they say, Daniel, what the hell are you doing right here? I mean, we're all in the same boat on this. I don't think just completely, subbing it out is going to fix the problem. And continuity along an offensive line is really important.
Critical.
I mean, that is something that a lot of people don't understand. You can't it's not plug and play. Like, if you have a receiver go down, that is completely different than having one of your offensive line. Like, those men and the quarterback and the running backs need to work in tandem to make sure this entire thing works. So it's not as simple as he sucks, get him out of there.
Yeah. You know who else couldn't be any worse?
Would that be Roger Rosengarten?
Well, Shedeur Sanders.
That too.
he couldn't be any worse. And Cleveland Browns are finding out this morning or yesterday afternoon that he could be a lot worse than a lousy quarterback they had. There's still a whole nother level of hell below that.
And I mean, even after we had you on the show today, on the Big Bad Morning Show, even after you left, we were still getting calls about Shedeur Sanders. And saying that we saw Dylan Gabriel, like, he wasn't any better. Like, they didn't even give Shedeur Sanders reps with the ones. And we're all kind of sitting there like, that's because he's the backup quarterback. And even that's not technically true, because he said in his own press conference that he'll work with the other receivers off to the side after practice. So it's not that he's not getting in reps. They might not be full speed game reps, but again, I think this whole Shedeur Sanders thing is such an odd lightning rod that people keep striking. I don't understand why it's such an issue.
The unfortunate thing is the Browns are probably going to figure out this year that Shedeur Sanders is not the guy, and they're going to be in position next year to have the draft capital. They'll only be competing with the New York Jets. That's the only team they're competing with for the best quarterback in the draft. But they're going to have a chance to get a very good quarterback at the top of the draft this next year, and they might actually solve the problem. Folks, you should be looking at that like it's potential Armageddon for the AFC North, because if the Browns ever can get it figured out with a first contract quarterback, they could be really deadly in this division.
Yeah, and I think if they lose on Sunday, I think they have a 25% chance of locking down of getting the first pick in the draft for next year. So that's not. We think they're such a joke. here in Baltimore. But it's not going to be that funny when the Rabbits got the gun one day and they're going to be 13-4, and we're going to be ones losing to them twice a year on a regular basis. So, but going back to the Ravens offensive line, I mentioned a second ago, Roger Rosengarten, to finish off the O-line. How did he do on Sunday?
Yeah, not a great game for Roger. He's probably been overall the Ravens' most consistent lineman. There's been a whole. Actually, that's not true. Falele has been by far the most consistent lineman, frankly, and all of his grades have been between a B and a D. Everybody else has had Fs. They've had good games as well.
Yeah.
But Rosengard has been probably the best in terms of his aggregate grade for the season. He's right around a C plus still, even with this game, or maybe a high C. He had 6 missed blocks in this game, but he had a little bit of everything: 1 penetration, 2 1/3 pressures, 1/3 of a quarterback hit, half a sack. And he didn't face Myles Garrett all the time on the right side. He did face him a few times, and he got beat by him a couple times, but he faced some other rushers who were a little bit lower down on the rush danger metric there. And he scored .61, which would be at the bottom of the D range. And even with a fairly substantial adjustment of .07, it's not as high as I gave Stanley, obviously facing more Myles Garrett, he still ends up being just at the top of the D range. So not a terrible game, but not exactly what they hope, obviously, from Rosengard. He did have 7 level 2 blocks. Still shows pretty good mobility there. 3 pancakes and 1 out of 1 on pulls. So they're happy to have Rosengard. Rosengard will be a key offensive lineman for the next 2 years. Hopefully Voorhees as well. We'll see if they've got one more year out of Stanley that they can really harvest. Hopefully they can. And then right guard, they are going to have to be figuring out how they deal with it next year. It might be Emory Jones. It could be somebody else. And I think they'll be drafting a new center at the position. And then Bullock may or may not start the season at center next year. It depends how high the pick is. If it's a 2nd-round pick, they probably directly go to this new player at center. If it's a 4th-round pick, it could well be he waits a year behind Bullock before he gets a chance.
So, I mean, obviously we mentioned probably not any wholesale changes on the line for the rest of the season unless it's truly awful. But do you think this is kind of like a red shirt season for Emory Jones?
I mean, I thought it should have been on NFI for the whole year. That really bothered me. Is that they had an opportunity to basically not use a year of team control, and they might have had to negotiate something with Emory. I don't really know how this works, or whether he could have said, "Wait a minute, I'm healthy." They're saying I'm not. All they're trying to do is lose me a year of my career here. He may have been able to say that, in which case they need to grease the wheels with some money. And I'm sure it could have been done somehow, and for whatever reason they didn't figure out how to do it. And Emory wanted back, and he's not even ready to play when he started practicing, which is that much worse about the whole situation. So, I was unhappy with that. But will he be back? Could he play this year? I think it's possible. Could he play effectively this year? I think that's a lot less likely.
Fair enough. Well, so it's kind of maybe to put a bow on the idea of what you just mentioned with what the line may look like next year. Obviously, they might need a center, but do you feel that moving forward they need to make more of a larger addressing the larger problem of we need better pass protection than getting guys that are good in run blocking? If Lamar is going to start becoming more of a pocket passer, do we need to start trying to get guys that aren't massive that can push people over rather than to build a pocket for Lamar?
Right. I mean, I wouldn't mind having a big physical 320 pound center with 33-inch arms. I wouldn't mind that at all. But I also don't want to go out and pay the draft capital to get somebody overdraft an offensive tackle that you're going to move to center, which, by the way, there's a whole lot of that. There's a whole lot of guys, the tackles are the dominant position drafted, and a lot of them get moved inside. That might end up happening to Emory Jones, by the way, is that he never sees a snap at tackle in his entire career. I won't be upset about that. I mean, Emory Jones is a 3rd-round pick. Him moving in and taking over at right guard would be fine. I'd prefer it if he was a guy you could really trust to play tackle when you needed him to. And that's something that I'm not sure we know yet about. I'm sure we do not yet know.
Yeah. Gotcha. I mean, and one other thing I wanted to bring up. It's been about a year and a half since Joe DeAlessandro's passed away.
Yeah.
it seems like after we lost him, everything's kind of gone downhill to a degree. There's been a degradation of play through. I mean, I never would have thought losing a coach like that would kind of end up showing up on the field so brightly.
I think you're right, and I think Warhop is a guy with a lot of NFL experience, a lot of college experience as well. I think there's a pretty good chance the Ravens, Warhop's an older guy, will be looking for a new offensive line coach this offseason, and I hope this job for an offensive line coach is one of the super attractive ones. I mean, you have Lamar Jackson, you have Derrick Henry, you have this great run game, you have the tradition, you have the DNA of the team. You really want to run the football. I think there should be an offensive line coach out there, a young, outstanding offensive line coach. They can figure out who the next great guy is, pick him. And the great thing about offensive line coaches is they don't tend to end up going on to be necessarily anyway, to be offensive coordinators or head coaches. They stay in the offensive line arena.
Yeah, that would be that would be great. I mean, and that's a good point about being the DNA of the team. I mean, arguably, we have people call in and say that Jonathan Ogden is the best Ravens draft pick of all time. I'm not going to argue with them on that. But having a guy like that in your team's DNA, I mean, he's around here all the time. I actually got to meet him. He came into the station recently too.
Cool.
Really nice guy. It's just, who wouldn't want to be an offensive line coach at the Castle?
Yeah, I just think it would be, it's like defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. I would think that those jobs would be so highly sought after. Obviously, head coach of the Baltimore Ravens would be tremendously sought after if that were to come open. I don't really believe that's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I know about 80% of the people that call my station would like that to happen, but I don't think that's going to happen either.
Okay, we need to move on here and talk a little bit about some of the individual skill position players. As always, Joe, the guest goes first. Who would you like to talk about?
Ooh, man, I got a lot of options here. I'll start with Charlie Kolar. Is that all right if I start towards the bottom?
You pick.
Yeah, so I love this guy. I think he has such a great personality that he brings to the team too. I mean, kind of the classic big, strong white tight end that likes to block for the Ravens. And he's also kind of developed as a solid pass catcher. I like that they're inserting him into that role a little bit more. I mean, the two, we mentioned it earlier in the other episode, the two blocks on the hurricane play. I mean, obviously Ricard really sealed it on the right side there, but Kolar going from each level to kind of make sure that Andrews didn't get caught from behind. Really impressive. He was actually the highest graded player on offense for Pro Football Focus, which I did not expect. And he also had a great block coming across the formation on the Henry run. So really impressed with Charlie. And I believe he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season.
That's right.
I would extend him, but I think I'm also kind of saying that with my heart and not with my mind.
Let me tell you about the online cannabis company that's changing the game, Mood.com. They created an entirely line of functional gummies, 100% federally legal THC blends, discreetly delivered right to your doorstep. And here's the best part. You can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with the promo code RAVENS. Now, I've tried a bunch of their gummies myself. Each one's totally unique. The Sleepy Time gummies knock me out right away. They help me unwind fast, leave me refreshed the next morning. The Epic Euphoria gummies, they're perfect for when your day just isn't going the way you want it to go. What makes Mood special is how they pair the THC with natural herbs and adaptogens. You won't find blends like this at any local shop. They've got gummies designed for focus, relaxation, clarity, even energy, all made from cannabis grown on small, family-owned American farms. No pesticides, no shortcuts, just high-quality weed you can trust. Plus, Mood backs everything with a 100-day satisfaction guarantee. So head on over to Mood.com, check out their amazing selection, and don't forget to use the promo code RAVENS at checkout to save 20% off your first order.
Or wallet, so...
Yeah, I think the problem is that all of the Ravens tight end room is up for grabs, and Ricard may or may not be back. I think that's going to be a matter of his choices, injuries, what his situation is at the end of the year, whether or not he can maintain a high level of play to the end of the year at this point. And then the three tight ends, I think Kolar might be the least likely to be back because I think somebody else is going to pay him money. And he came out when he was at Iowa State. I mean, they ran the whole offense through him. I always say he was like Chamberlain in the post for that offense that they threw everything to him. But they, in the in the Ravens offense, he's just a cog in the machine, and it's not that he's been unvaluable. He's been very valuable, but I don't think they're going to be able to keep him. I think like Josh Oliver went. I think that he's probably going to be paid by somebody else.
One. Well, and interestingly enough, though, and I wouldn't have believed this if I didn't look at Pro Football Reference, but his snaps have gone down pretty considerably from the start of the season until now. I mean, do you have
Likely was hurt,
or Kolar? I mean, and then Likely was hurt, yes, but even then, I mean, they're kind of Likely's getting around like 30 to 35, and Kolar is going down to about, I think it's about 20 to 30.
Right.
So obviously, Likely being out, but I mean,
there is another factor.
Note about it. Yeah, and what do you think that factor is?
Well, the other factor I would bring up is that the Ravens have moved back to playing heavier football as the years gone on, and they peaked out against the Vikings at 2.14 heavies per play. But when you've got four guys who all want to be on the field every play or 2/3 of the play, it's obvious you can't do that because that would be 8/3 of the snaps or 2.67 per play, and the Ravens are averaging more like 1.5 or 1.6. Tight ends per play, a tight ends and a fullback. So it's a crowded room, and it's a room that all wants to be on the field. And it's a good problem to have in a certain sense. You get fresh legs on the field a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be cross my fingers that they give Charlie some money, but I have a feeling, I mean, I could see him like going to someone like the Patriots or something like that. I could see him throw him some money. That I think he'd be good with Drake May in that offense too.
That'd be
but
good.
I will miss. He's just a weird guy, and I kind of like that energy that he brings to the team.
Yeah, I just as an aside about Kolar, I've never seen anybody try to be as funny as he does at the podium. The only other guy who's kind of close is when Kyle Van Noy is kind of doing his stand-up routine at the podium. So Kyle Van Noy has different emotions though. He was in bitter mode when we saw him this summer. He's talking about his contract, and that wasn't a very pleasant experience to be around. But sometimes. He was up there and he's kind of playing the reporters against each other. And I remember trying to ask him a question, and then it was Morgan Adsit, sit up, goes, "Wait a minute, come on over here." Kind of question. And then he goes, "Hey, you really bullied him, didn't you?" Kind of thing. It's just like, it's almost like in John Miller's voice, I hear it.
Yeah, right.
Him doing that. But Kolar really tries to be funny at the podium. And sometimes that's it goes over well. And if it's Marlon Humphrey or it's somebody else telling a story, you understand what the shtick is. With Kolar, it wasn't as obvious always what he's trying to do, and yet, it's funny.
Yeah, man.
All right, let me move on. I'll talk about Mark Andrews. Big game for him from a highlight standpoint. The Hurricane play was great. He caught a couple balls, which was nice, and set the record for not receptions, for receiving yards. Right?
Yes,
right.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep, he needs 4 receptions to be the all-time leader. That'll be next week.
We hope. Yeah.
Most likely, yes. He'll be triple, and he'll be only the second tight end in NFL history to be the triple crown for his franchise. That'll join Travis Kelce.
Okay, very good. That's a good spot for him. Obviously, there was never a question like entering the season that he'd be a Ring of Honor player. And whatever happens to Andrews, and I think his fate, unfortunately, is in the hands of some other players. It's in the hands of Charlie Kolar to a certain degree if he was willing to sign for less. It's definitely in the hands of Isaiah Likely. I think it'll only be one of Likely and Andrews that comes back. I think the Ravens kind of already have it in their mind that Likely will probably be back on the franchise tag if they can't agree to a contract. And when we're talking about the rest of the money being spent, Linderbaum is sitting out there at a potential price of $20 million, and I'm not disagreeing with that somebody will probably pay him that, but I'd give that money to Travis Jones. I think he's the much more important player.
That's I was so offensively minded with that. I didn't even think about. I was just thinking about money for the offense. And that's kind of. I really love Mark Andrews. I think that he will always go down as a player that will remind you of a certain time period of this franchise, especially with the way that he came up with Lamar and they were working, in tandem. I mean, the catch against the Chargers is a 2018, helped win that game, the long touchdown. I mean, that was a not to get wistful, but it was like, oh, I remember where I was when I was watching that, and I was like, we have a new quarterback, an electric quarterback, and a new tight end duo. This is like Joe Flacco and Joe Flacco and Dennis Pitta. Like this is what it should have. This is what it should have been if Pitta didn't get hurt. So I hope. Like, do you ever think at any point in your mind that he would sign for less and stay with the team?
It's
if
possible.
You lost Kolar and Ricard, maybe that's the two guys.
Whenever you say that, I think the chance is pretty low. I do think the one guy who did it this last year was Ronnie Stanley. I thought he probably could have gotten $5 million a year more, or pretty close to it, if he'd signed with New England. And I think he did the Ravens a solid to sign for less, and he might have even done them more of a solid, frankly, the way it's worked out, if he'd signed with New England. So, I don't mean that in a bad way. It just is sometimes how things work out. I'm not beating on Stanley in terms of it, but it's the Ravens didn't have another answer. By the way, they didn't have another answer for who they'd put at left tackle this year.
Not at all.
If they didn't have Ronnie Stanley, so they're very fortunate to have him, and he's kept them as a playoff contender. But yeah, the contract as a whole has a good chance to be a 2-year, $44 million deal.
Yeah, and I mean, like we just said, if you think the offensive line could be worse, it definitely can be. I mean, if they would have thrown Carson Vincent out there at the beginning of the season, I feel like we'd actually have a lot more problems on our hands than what we have right now. Yeah. So,
all right, I did Andrews. Who's your next guy?
Well, I'll just close it off with tight ends with Likely. Why do you feel like he hasn't been able to really carve out the same kind of role this season that he did last year?
I'll say that Likely had been an enormous extended play target and a guy who really benefited from that. So the longer time to throw Lamar has, the better chance Likely is to make an impact play and yards after the catch too. And that just has not developed in the same way this year, and especially in recent weeks, despite the fact the Ravens have been winning for these last 3 games with Lamar. It's been a much more of a trying to find ways to not give him lots of time in the pocket has been central to what other teams are trying to do. It also was during the losing streak as well, but it seems like the Minnesota game in particular was it was not ideal for Lamar.
Well, and in this last game, he had Likely open with the out pattern to the left, and he just let him because didn't have any time to throw. So I think Likely is probably one of the players that is hurt the most by poor offensive line play. I think maybe Zay Flowers in there too, with his ability to help extend plays and get open. But I personally still think that Likely is the future of the tight end room. But if they don't find a way to make sure that if you don't find a way to make sure Lamar has time to throw, then you're going to lose Isaiah Likely's biggest threat, like you just mentioned, is his ability to just make sure that he can get up the field or just find a soft spot to make sure that Lamar has an outlet. Because he's not. I think his best game was against Minnesota. It was 4 receptions for 60 yards. I mean, outside of that, it's just been 5 to 8 yard dump offs, and maybe he gets a first down. But I don't want to call him a disappointment because that's not really fair to him, just with the way the season started out. And it's not completely his fault, but I was expecting a big season from him, and it just hasn't really materialized.
I think that's fair. Honestly, I think that's exactly what's happened. You mentioned Flowers. So I'm going to move on to him and talk about him because he's the one Raven who it doesn't really seem to matter what's going on in terms of there's no one who can cover him from the top of the stem. The reason they can is they don't really know where it is. He can put his foot in the ground at any point, break to the middle of the field, and there's nobody who can stay with him. And he keeps doing this, and he's become, not only a good receiver on crossing routes, which he was earlier in the year, and Lamar was hitting with good regularity, but he's also a better bailout player now. A really nice bailout throw by Lamar in this game, hitting him over the middle of the field for a nice gain. It might have been a third down, but
it was a third and 10 with 8.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. There you
go. He's got the whole thing right in front of him.
Hey man, but it's funny. I had that one written down though because I want him to just catch the ball and run up field more rather than this. He is shifty. I understand that, and that is a major asset of his, but at certain points in time, just put your foot in there and just catch it and go.
Right.
He has shown the ability to do that 45-yard play up the sideline. I thought he was going to score on that one. I had the same kind of reaction you did with Henry's run. I was like, great, if he doesn't score, then they're probably just going to get 3 points out of this.
Yeah, he didn't try and break that back to the inside. He just allowed himself to go out of bounds, which I can't really get that visual read on exactly how hard that defender is focused on his inside hip to make sure he doesn't get back to the inside. But it is a case where I kind of wish he'd made a move on that play and we'd seen something. The thing that you're talking about, though, where just get north and south quicker, the thing a lot of great receivers develop is a U-turn move where they come back towards the football, they make a player miss as they're U-turning back to either side. And that can be very powerful. It'd be great for Flowers. I think he'd be very good at it. He'd take a few more hits because of it. He's
definitely got the speed to do that. And I had said before the season started, I felt like he'd be a 1,000-yard receiver. He's going to be close to that if he stays on this trajectory. But if we ever get an offensive line that just gives Lamar enough time to throw, I mean, I don't see any reason why he couldn't be a 1,300, 1,500 yard kind of receiver.
I can come up with some reasons why that wouldn't be true, but we don't need to relay that. All I do is anybody who's talking about yardage plays for the Ravens, you're always going to be disappointed if you're going for fantasy stats because the Ravens play in too many positive game scripts. And if you really try and work it out, is how many targets is he going to get and how many yards per target is he going to get? It's very hard to get up to a number like 1,300. It's just nobody gets that many targets in the Ravens offense. And it's very hard to maintain numbers like 10 yards per target, let alone the 11 or 11 and a half people sometimes project for a player like Flowers.
That's a fair point. Ken. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, let's go. If you do one more, and then we'll go on and do some mailbag questions here.
I'll do one more here. DeAndre Hopkins, just one catch on Sunday, and it was a big one. To set up that 4th and 1 play. But Harbaugh said he wants to get him more involved in the offense. And I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, though.
I can maybe come up with a couple of ways they could do it. I would not have seen it as he runs a slant pass and gets the ball, which is exactly what happened on there. That was a great use of him. And he boxed out. He did everything, properly to make sure he secured that football. Not an easy catch, by the way. That's the kind of thing you get distracted, you get your hands hit, you lose that football. So it's a big play. But the other times they went to him were a couple of flat balls and one that was a looped ball towards the left sideline, had a good amount of air under it, but it was overthrown out of bounds, and Hopkins didn't have a chance to make a play on the ball. The ball's got to land in the field of play in those situations, particularly when Hopkins is involved. And this is one of the ways the Ravens can take advantage on the outside the numbers is letting Hopkins go get the football. He and Tez Walker, I thought in this game would have been a great throw over the defense option for the Ravens. And Tez Walker ended up, I think, getting only 9 snaps in this game, which was kind of frustrating.
It was 9.
Yeah. So,
I mean, and like you said, though, Hopkins has shown that he still has the ability of, if you put it up there, 9 times out of 10, he's going to catch it or draw a penalty. He's done that a couple times this season too. I mean, overall, I think he's kind of lived up to what we thought he would be. I didn't expect him really to, have 40 catches for, 600 yards or anything like that, or 700 yards, but getting him more involved would be key. But like we've been saying with basically every other pass catcher on this team, we just need some time to get him the ball.
All right, great thoughts there. Let's jump into the mailbag here, and we'll talk about a few of these. Minion Hunter, thanks for the question. You got a couple here. Mitchell dropped a pass, which turned into an interception. Last week, he fumbled twice, but didn't cost the team. Could ball security be the reason he wasn't activated earlier in the year?
Yeah, that seems to be an issue of his, and especially with John Harbaugh. If you don't hold on to the ball, that is a very quick way to find yourselves on the sideline. I mean, I feel like if Justice Hill was healthy this game, that interception that was more or less his fault could have also led him to be in the doghouse, but they didn't have really any other choice but to play him.
Yeah.
I feel like that's an easy way to say, yeah, that's why he's not getting the ball. But I just don't understand it. Like he has too much skill, and he would be too good for this offense to leave him on the side just because of even your best running back has, and it hasn't happened recently, knock on wood, but Derrick Henry had an issue with holding on the ball earlier in the season too. So I don't know. I think Keaton should be getting the ball. He should be at least get 20 to 25 snaps a game. He's getting closer to that. But if worrying about fumbles is the reason he's not, I don't agree with John Harbaugh on that one.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the reason. Special teams was given as a reason. Ali made a bigger special teams contribution. I think that's something you get around with by manipulating Hill's time, and I think you end up with more value out of Mitchell on offense plus Mitchell's kickoff returns than you do with Ali on special teams plus Ali's kickoff returns. So I didn't agree with that. So there might have been a secondary reason though, and ball security and practice might have been it. And they would never say that about a player. They would never talk about that. It's a competitive disadvantage to start, and you're going to get a lot of second man of the ball kind of shots on goal, as the Ravens defense would call them. So anyway, all right. Appreciate the question, Minion Hunter. One more from you, Ree Andrews TD. Why can't the Ravens figure out how to incorporate 1 to 2 of those trick plays or counter tendency plays per game? Do they already do it and we just don't see it?
I don't know. They've never really been a big trick play kind of team. To me, that's the reason they're trick plays, though, is that they're so few and far between. I mean, that one was perfectly placed. We've had ones in the last few years that didn't work out. Was that Odell Beckham Jr.? His pass to the end zone that got intercepted. So I don't know. I don't think you need to have one every game. I'd say maybe every like 3 or 4, because he kind of already did that anyway with the pitch out to Lamar on the tush push against the Vikings. So I was even kind of surprised 2 weeks in a row you had a different wrinkle on that play. I mean, I don't really know what else they could do to wrinkle the tush push now. I think I guess so. And I think the Eagles did that once already this season. So I don't know. I mean, I think Monken has the, the acumen, the play calling acumen to build calls like that, but I don't think there's something that there are much more simpler plays that they need to focus on now rather than, going into Madden and building random plays.
Yeah, I wouldn't have the problem with them adding more, but they're going to layer it in, and the installs are not trivial to get those plays in. I mean, they have to go through them during the week. They have to run them against the defense. Then they put them in the walkthrough. So time is expended on those. And I'm with you. They can't just put 10 in the playbook. And if they were to put 20 new ones in, they'd have to work all summer to get that done. So it's something. And we did, by the way, there were segments during the summer. They worked on a number of trick plays. They had, not to get into it in any depth and tell anything about the play itself, but they had some hitch and ladder plays that they ran.
Okay.
Where they fastball out and then they pitch it back. And most of those are like end of game kind of situations. They do. Every team has them. It's not anything that would be a secret for the Ravens, but they did try some things and we're like, wow, okay, we can't report on this segment because they're talking about all these things.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's move on here. Vanton, and that's capital Vantin. Hey, Ken, do you agree with Harb's assessment on the offensive line from yesterday's pressure? I don't know enough to know, frankly, and would like your opinion. Emory Jones' appraisal and John's statement seem contradictory to me. Okay, so the Emory Jones appraisal is probably coach speak in terms of exactly where he is right now, how ready he is. I wouldn't be worried about it. There was nothing he did to go out of his way to say how great Emory Jones was when he described where Emory Jones is in terms of his readiness. And you always want to basically show your opponent that any of these guys could be ready to go right now. And you can't just practice to go against Daniel Faalele if you had something special you want to do to him.
Yeah.
So there's that. The other thing, I put out about a 4-minute video, talks about the reasons why they'd say the things they did. And I don't think the simplest thing is Harbaugh's communication style is aimed at misdirecting opponents. I don't feel like he does enough, in fact, to misdirect opponents and mislead the media and fans, because we have no right to know. And I'm, as an analyst, I don't even give a crap. I'll figure it out for myself. You can tell me whatever you think is gonna fool me, and I'll still read between the lines and say, here's what I think he means by this. And we'll see.
Well, I mean, and we talked about this on the Big Bad Morning Show today. Harbaugh is not the kind of guy to throw someone else under the bus. He's not going to sit there. He might say, yeah, we need to execute better, we need to play better, but you could say that about any person on the team at any one point in time. You'd think after having nearly 20 years of this guy being with your franchise that the fan base would have an understanding of he's basically kind of going to give you coach speak the entire time. Mm-hmm. I can't really even remember a single time where he's just said, yeah, he needs to play better. Like, I can't remember at any point where he's ever done that to someone.
I can, but it's usually when he uses, he gets into salty, and you could draw something from that.
Tim
Williams
true.
Was done. Ben Cleveland, we said, he had so many Ben Cleveland questions. Why isn't Ben Cleveland playing? Why isn't Ben Cleveland playing? That he came out with, Ben Cleveland knows exactly what he needs to do to get on the field.
Yes,
he's not.
They're few they're few and far between. If you want him to crush Daniel Faalele like everybody else on Twitter, it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. He's also going to say, and like we said with your grading system, there are players that play well and there are some that play bad. It's just that it's very inconsistent, and he's not. I mean, unless Lamar got sacked 12 times, he's probably not going to say anything, completely terrible about them.
Right.
They got to play better. That's what he said. I know that people are frustrated by him saying they played pretty darn good. I wouldn't call it that, but again, I answer phone calls and press buttons at a radio station. So I don't have that. I don't have anything for that. So.
All right. Cole, thanks for your question. For the offensive show, by the eye test, is the OL group as a whole regressing? Do the team stats and your offensive line grading back that up? The last two games have not been good for the offensive line as a whole. They've been kind of down. Actually, this game was probably a mild bounce back from that Minnesota game. But yeah, they Faalele in particular is at his lowest point for the year, these last two games combined. So, that's not in a great place. We saw Voorhees' streak of really good games get broken with a bad game. That might have been 3 games ago, and then he had a D this game. So not so great there. I mean, yes, I'd say it's probably accurate. The one guy who seems to be up is Linderbaum, who's had 3 good games in the last 4. So you always got a couple players with green arrows, even when you have 3 or 4 red arrows on the time.
It's never all bad at the same. It's never not all like, it's not everyone's constantly playing at a D level. If you could just get them all to be at a B plus or a B minus, I don't think we would be nearly as critical of them as we are. But I don't know. I mean, maybe it'll come together at the end of the season. I don't know. I mean, you were scoring back in 2012 when they were decided to switch to Bryant McKinney. Like, was it as bad then as it is now?
It was pretty awful. The big problem was Orr never was able to play left tackle in the NFL. It didn't matter where he went. He was always terrible there. And he had been a very good rookie at right tackle. In fact, I thought the move to left tackle could possibly have cost him a Hall of Fame career or a near Hall of Fame career. Certainly, multiple Pro Bowl career there. Huge differentiation is play at right and left tackle in the 2008 season alone, or 2009 season alone, I should say. And that was when Gaither got hurt, and then Gaither came back and thought he was going to play left tackle. And when they told him Orr's going to play left tackle, Gaither said, "Well, I've got a back injury anyway." So, that guy was capable of some utter stupidity, but he was a great left tackle for 2 years in there. He was a great left tackle, and it would have been something that the Ravens really could have benefited from if he'd have been able to stay there and they hadn't felt like they had to make that change.
Well, like I said in the other episode, this is the worst Ravens team we've had in 2 of the last 3 years. Maybe somehow it all come together and the offensive line does just enough to help help the get the ball out in time. So I don't know. I'm at this point. Well, like I've already said this many times. It can get worse, but
Yes,
I am cautiously optimistic moving forward that maybe they'll figure something out.
right. The 2012 team was actually the worst of the first 5 Harbaugh years. They all made the playoffs, and the 2012 team, the very first worst of them, who finished 12th in DVOA for the entire season in the NFL, they're the team that won it all. And that's right about where the Ravens are right now, is about 11th or 12th in the entire NFL in DVOA. So it'd be exciting to see that happen again. I got one more question I'm going to do here is from Daniel Sampiano. Says, why do you think Lamar Jackson is reluctant to run this year? The lack of read option is hurting the run game, and his reluctance is leading to more sacks. Is he playing hurt, seeing ghosts behind a bad offensive line, or intentionally conserving himself for the future? I'm going to answer that one. I'll give you a chance as soon as we're done here. First of all, I don't think, he's dogging the team somehow by conserving himself for the future, or at least not in any way that the team would feel is inappropriate. They may have had discussions about him and said, hey, we want you to run a little bit less too. Take a sack if you need to, or whatever. I think what we're seeing is just basically other teams this year with a slightly less mobile Lamar Jackson have found ways to contain him that have made it a lot easier. You mentioned it with regard to the first play with regard to Schlesinger.
Yeah. And that's the kind of play that maybe 3 years ago he beats him to the outside and takes it, 10 yards or gets a first down out of it. I mean, we get a lot of calls, people saying that he's lost a step. I don't even know what that looks like though. So it's because that's such a hard thing to quantify. I think that he is trying to become more of a pocket passer. So I don't think that that's such a loaded statement to say that he's conserving himself for the future. Because he seems like a guy that does want to play for a long time. Mm-hmm. So at that point in time, you have to realize that if it's year 12, he's not going to be running like it was in year 4. So he might have to alter his style of game. He has become a better pocket passer year over year. Maybe we're kind of in like a middle of some growing pains in terms of what he believes his game is going to be moving forward. But I think it's such a amalgamation of different things coming together that just picking one of those things that the question, I don't think that I definitely don't think it's conserving himself, but the other ones, it can be a piece of all of those things.
Yeah. I think that's a fair way to put it. All right. I don't know if I didn't ask you to do this. I'm sorry about it, but I generally do a 3-2-1 MVP where we normally go, guess 3, my 3. Who's your number 3 guy?
Oh, I'd have to pick Linderbaum. But that's only just because I like the flashiness of having a Zay Flowers or a Mark Andrews as your 1 and 2. Linderbaum is the unsung hero of the line at this point in time. So maybe he deserves better than 3, but I'm going to give him 3.
Okay. And he might be sung as well, but 3 is where I have him as well for this game. How about your number 2 guys?
I will pick Zay Flowers. It's got to be Zay has to be number 2, considering what Andrews was able to accomplish on Sunday. But Zay really got the offense going with getting that pass down the sideline to put him in the red zone, even though that ended in 3. And then the big third down play in the fourth quarter. So that was the drive that helped them tie the game at 16. So not a lot of run this past Sunday, but very crucial plays when he did get the ball.
All right, I'll toss Derrick Henry in number 2, even though I had Zay Flowers in mine originally. He still is the bell cow. The only thing I'm concerned about is some of the failures in short yardage that keep showing up. But he's running enough for enough yards per carry that we should be excited about that. And go ahead, take us through to number 1.
All right, number 1, Mark Andrews. He had a few big catches. Obviously passed Derek Mason for the most yards in Ravens history. So now he owns touchdowns and yards. Hopefully this coming Sunday, he'll end up passing, that'd be Mason again for receptions. Am I correct?
Yes.
So then he will own all 3 major receiving records, the franchise records. I said it a little while ago, but Travis Kelce is the only other tight end to do that for their franchise. So, could be the swan song of Mark's time in Baltimore. So I think he's going out on top. I mean, he's even though a lot of people are pretty down on him coming into the season, I still think that he's a key player on this offense. And I think Lamar and Monken see that too.
Yeah, I agree completely. Two things about Andrews. The first is that he and Lamar came into this league and they're both backup players in their rookie year. So they got to play a lot on the number 2 team. And that's a lot of where this chemistry got built originally. It was in that summer of 2018 of him, just catching a lot of balls directly from Lamar Jackson. And watching that camp, Lamar took off running a lot that camp. It's like, wait a minute. Are we going to try and throw the ball or not? You just get all upset about it. Then you see who Lamar Jackson actually is in the games, and it's actually pretty exciting. But that's number one about Andrews. But excited that he's maintained always kind of what almost seemed like a psychic connection with Lamar, the ability for Lamar to know where he's going to move on an extended play and get him the ball there. But number two about Andrews, we saw him on the sideline dealing with was obviously diabetic equipment to try and test that. In the game. And the guy's has had to work through a lot. My understanding is he bought himself a hyperbaric chamber for use in healing at home. And for those of you who don't know, it's like a high oxygen environment that he can rest in. And supposedly it heals you from injuries quicker. I imagine everybody would want one if that were really true, but
it's not true. It's not full pseudoscience. There is something behind it, but just don't be like Antonio Brown and freeze your feet off like he did that one time. He had the hyperbaric chamber, and then he was out for a game because his toes were frozen.
All right, Joe, such a pleasure having you on to talk football. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online or if they want to call the station.
You can reach me personally on Twitter. It's Joe_LaCroix, LACROIX. If you want to get the Big Bad Morning Show on Twitter, you can reach us there at BBMS1057 The Fan. If you want to call the station, you can call 410-583-1057. We are actually streaming live on YouTube now, so you can watch us. That is
except for the guest, only the big three.
Yes,
the guest is a silent voice of doom.
Yeah, pay no attention to that behind the curtain. But hopefully we will rectify that situation soon. But if you go to the Fans YouTube page, you can see us on there. And actually, all the shows for all the main day parts, you'll be able to watch them on the Fans YouTube page.
And I hope I'm not doing a disservice to the station to say, would really love to have your calls to come on between 8 and 8:30 on Tuesday while I'm in the studio.
Definitely.
And get one. Joe, thanks again for coming on.
Yep. No, thank you so much, Ken. I really appreciate it, buddy.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.